I've seen and heard countless debates on this topic, and pretty much all of them sound the same. And the main disagreement usually comes down to how we define human. If you're pro-choice, you obviously want to define it in such a way that doesn't make it sound like you're pro-murder. Because if you say a particular fetus is human, and you also say you're okay with killing that fetus, you automatically lose the argument, as then you'll be advocating the murder of an innocent. I think the most naive stance you can take is to state that there is only one colloquial definition of human that people use. This is not only false, but is also the recipe of an unhealthy debate. There are two definitions of what a human is. One of them is black and white and objective. The other is more subjective and more philosophical. To make things clear, in regard to the first definition, I'll be using the word Homo sapien, and for the second definition, I'll be using personhood. A Homo sapien is defined as an organism possessing DNA belonging to the Homo sapien species. This is what separates us from a chimp or a monkey. Right from conception, the zygote formed from a sperm and an oocyte contains its own unique set of DNA separate from the mother's. This diploid cell immediately produces specifically human proteins and enzymes and directs its own further growth and development. This zygote is a new, genetically unique, newly existing live organism. So in layman's terms, biologically, a Homo sapien is formed at the point of conception. But when talking about personhood, and when personhood begins, it's much more subjective. This definition of human tries to explain the meaning and quality of what it is to be a human being. Many people try to define objectively, albeit unsuccessfully, what personhood really is and when such a concept starts. Such examples being having consciousness or being independent. The problem with this logic is, no matter what requirement they name or give you in order for it to be considered human, you can always find an analogy that debunks that faulty logic. For example, if you define a human as having consciousness and being independent, then what about a baby born into a coma? That baby will not be conscious. And as for independence, well, not only would that baby be 100% dependent on the life support machine, but in fact all babies are 100% dependent on someone to take care of them, otherwise they would die. Yet despite of this, everyone agrees that a newborn is a human, even though this human lacks the requirements of a human that has been listed by a number of pro-choices. This is a clear contradiction on their part, and most certainly a display of faulty logic. The question I would really like to be answered by pro-choices is, why is a newborn a human? If you deny that an undeveloped fetus is a human, surely you can say the same about a newborn baby. A fetus is an undeveloped human, just like a newborn is an undeveloped human. If your whole argument is based off development, then surely the only way for you to be consistent is to say nobody is human until they reach age 25. I find it very strange how everyone draws this arbitrary line at birth, like as if it's a pinnacle moment in time in which to define a human being, when in reality, nothing dramatic changes one day before and after birth in terms of its development. Yet everyone agrees that a newborn is a human. What about the people who say the line exists because before birth, the fetus relies on the mother to stay alive? And how exactly does the baby not rely on the mother after birth to stay alive? The presence of a mere umbilical cord really doesn't change anything. Another problem with this argument is that it's human-specific. You can't use the same argument when talking about birds or reptiles. Or maybe it's an emotional thing. Maybe because a newborn looks like a human, that makes everyone agree it's human. The problem with this logic is, just because something looks like something, that doesn't make it in fact that something. If I dressed a chimp up with clothes and gave it some surgery to make it look as human as possible, is the chimp now a human? No, of course not. The reason why it's not is down to DNA. I find it completely absurd to use anything other than science to tell us what is and what isn't. Anyway, so that covers the first part of this video on abortion. I'll likely make a second video detailing the moral arguments for abortion, but I just wanted to separate them and make it clear in this first video that scientifically and logically consistently speaking, abortion is the killing of a human being. Thank you for listening.